Bonjour, mon ami. I think we can all agree that I absolutely had to wear this beret today. My friends, this is the second video on the Paris trip. I cover everything from first impressions, cultural observations, which will include lots of food and inside view of some of the most iconic places in Paris. If you're interested in the fashion video about Paris, you will want to watch the video next. I want to give you some high-level tips and just random observations that I noticed across the board without boring you with too many details. I'm subjective, of course, because this is not an American going to Paris. This is a European American going to Paris. I was pleasantly surprised that most everyone in the hotel spoke French, and when speaking English, almost everyone understood on the streets, such as, the merchants. So when I was shopping, people of all ethnicities were speaking French, which was such a wonderful experience. I was trying to figure out who's local and who's a tourist, and it was pretty hard. Let's talk about currency. You don't want to exchange money and buy the local currency at the airport. In my case, they charge 30% of the fee. Now, if you go inside the city, the currency rate exchange was 10% less, so that's the fee that they took. And versus I did have transaction fees from my bank because I did use a Visa, and that fee was 5%. So you have 30, 10, and 5%. I know there are cards out there that have no fees included. I don't have one, so that's definitely something I need to look into for future trips. Next, I'm going to talk about coffee, specifically Starbucks, because I'm a really big fan of Starbucks. Now, this is a treat for me because then the Paris Starbucks. And another fun fact was that there were no gift cards available in Paris, in the store, in the actual Starbucks store. And it kind of brings me back to the old days when I realized the gift cards is such an American, I think, concept. So this is just a good tip to have if you want to purchase any gift cards in the future. A popular way to travel in Paris is with the bicycle. I've seen a lot of women in the bikes, including with skirts and even in a cold, freezing cold temperature. And what's interesting, because they were beautiful and had makeup on, and it's interesting because when I'm a cycler, but when I go, I never put on makeup. So no, they were just using this obviously as a travel, from point A to point B, full-on makeup and outfit, and on a bicycle. So that was a lot of fun to see. Now let's talk about tips. This is an important one because in the US, tips are, very important. And this is a very clear distinguished between what's happening in France and in Europe in general. Now here, people say there are no tips needed. They are included in the service. So you're already purchasing everything with the tip included. Now that doesn't mean it won't stop them from asking, and especially in touristic areas. And I found this very interesting because you would think someone that is civilized, has manners, and they're used to not to have the tips included, they wouldn't ask, but they did. And they even mentioned this at the highest 5-star restaurant. So I'll talk to you about that in a minute. But yes, just know that there's no need to tip. If it's an absolutely extraordinary service that you're getting and you do want to tip, of course, then cash is recommended. So I did my research ahead of time and I knew about the whole tip situation, but this didn't stop the taxi driver from, from asking either. And it gave me the feeling that they're trying to use the situation and use the fact that it's very noticeable, right, that you're a tourist and you don't speak French, you don't speak the language, and then they will pick up on that and try to, at least I felt like they're trying to squeeze every single dime out of every occasion. And it wasn't just one person, it was several services and several people. And yes, this was a very, reminded me of back in the Romanian days where, yeah, that's just the reality of how things are done. So the whole cost of living situation, I was very surprised to find that the prices there were the same as in the US, relatively, right? But here we make a lot more than there, meaning that their salary is a fraction of the equivalent role here in the US. But then the cost of food and everything else is the same. So I'm just almost wondering, how can they afford some of these items? And I noticed this specifically in the touristic areas where I found certain things very expensive. So I'm going to give you an example. Of course, I wanted to bring back some chocolate for, you know, family and friends. And then I'm not sure the name of it. It was just some at a random boulangerie, some chocolate, 6 pieces with 20 euros. And I found that very expensive because here, you know, in the US, we have the boxes of chocolate, which are definitely under $10. I shop all of this at Costco, which is just dirt cheap, right? Compared to, you know, in big volume. So I was overall taken aback by how expensive things were to their own cost of living and their own salaries, which leads me to believe that it's mainly then for tourists, and tourists are expected to pay more just in general, right? More than the locals. Food was incredibly delicious. You know, the pastries and crepes did not disappoint. Of course, I tried everything, but also don't be fooled to think that absolutely every single dish at every restaurant is going to be amazing. No, it's just, you know, of course, depends on your taste. And one of the letdowns was actually the restaurant across from Moulin Rouge. We had the dinner right the night before the show. And yes, the food was like an average at best. And so on this point, I'd like to recommend for you to look at the reviews online if you are planning ahead, you know, a dinner or a special occasion, and see what other people are saying. Try the local food at the local boulangerie, the pastry shops. Those are really, really good. And also, if you can, the hotel that you're staying at, if it has breakfast included, like they have usually buffet types, it's a great opportunity to try all kinds of, you know, bigger diversity without necessarily costing you more. So let's talk about a couple of items that I've seen that are very popular, were maybe like 4 or 5. The poke bowls. Poke bowls were very, very popular, and I've seen them everywhere in the markets and in the streets, and I was very surprised. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's just, you know, a bowl of, I think, rice and all kinds of raw fish and veggies, and it's delicious. Small plates and glasses. I've seen this just across the board, especially at the breakfast where they're serving at our hotel, and it's just a smaller size. Now, smaller compared to the US. And some would argue that the US is just bigger than everywhere else in the world. And, you know, you get used to whatever you get used to. I'm comparing now US versus France size. And yes, I have a small plate in my kitchen, like a set of smaller and, you know, bigger one. And my small one would be the regular in France. And also the glasses were very much smaller, and the mugs were smaller, and it just set the tone to consume less. You have to try the Lavazza cappuccino. It's just incredible. And I've been raving how I love my Jacob's coffee in the morning. That's something that I purchase online, and I make it home with milk and honey. Incredible. And outside of my home, I prefer the Starbucks. Specifically, there's one. But other than that, I really never, ever, ever try coffee anywhere in hotels. I don't care what machines they're using and what kind of sophisticated, you know, processes. I just don't bother anymore because I don't really like coffee. Now, in Europe, you have the popular Lavazza cappuccino, which is so good. It's made with milk and then an espresso, and then of course they have the incredible honey, which is, yeah, I'm showing you footage here, was so, so delicious. So I highly recommend you try their cappuccinos and just sit there and enjoy the moment as you savor the flavors and then just people watch. A very nice addition to see were the menus. The menus were offered in popular languages. So there was a gentleman in touristic areas waiting outside of the restaurant who was trying to lure you in, right, to go inside their restaurant. And of course, they have the menus listed outside and you can read them, but they will also ask you what language you prefer, and then they will provide a menu in your language, hopefully if it's one of the top 10 most popular one, right? But it's interesting because I haven't seen that here in the US, and I think that's such a nice way to cater to tourists. More food that is very popular and delicious, and this is the raclette. I hope I'm saying it correctly. The raclette sandwich is pretty much just a fresh baguette with jambon, which is the ham, and then a slice of cheese and a couple of thin sliced pickles. Incredible, absolutely incredible. It's so simple and delicious, and I've seen it throughout the days everyone eat that, and I'm just thinking, well, it's just a baguette. I already had baguette for breakfast. I'm not going to stuff myself with more bread. And then last day my husband had it. I'm showing you pictures here. It was just so delicious. I don't know, this whole combination is very simple yet very strategically put together. It's filling and just a must try. And the most important part that I forgot, of course, to mention is the cheese. It's not just your regular slice of cheese. No, you have this whole wheel of cheese sliced in half, and then they put on it like this press of like a heater. And then it just melts. So on the bottom, you can see that the cheese is melting, and then they put the sandwich over there, and your freshly melted cheese is just being layered nicely on top of the baguette. It's just incredible, delicious. More popular items were churros. I was so surprised again because churros is I think a Hispanic origin, and I see that here in the States as well. Costco has that, mine at least does. And it's not my favorite, it's just bread. I haven't actually tried it there because I wanted to try, of course, the French pastries and the chocolate pastries. Croissants were my favorite. But yes, it was very, very popular. So think about it this way. If there was a market, a Christmas market with, you know, hundreds of people, you had 4 items on rotation every other tent. Churros was one of them, and Nougat was another. And Nougat, if you're not familiar, it's just this white looking, I can't actually describe it to you. It's very sweet, it's delicious, looks like caramel, but it's not. It's fluffy. I would say like a fluffed up marshmallow, and with, you know, all kinds of variations of nuts and pistachios and berries. It was very, very good and expensive. Oh my goodness, be careful with that because they charge, I think it's 50 euros per pound or more. I think it was 65 euros per pound. So if you do try it, try a very thin slice because it's by weight. And we go back. So let me analyze for a second the breakfast that I had. This was very interesting because, you know, these are the details that I completely forgot about. Grapes. Grapes have seeds over there, and I was really thrown off. And of course, grapes have seeds because that's how they're grown. It's just that I am here used to grapes without seeds, and I think that they are engineered that way. Another thing that I discovered, which, you know, this is a really good opportunity. When you travel, try new foods, try new everything, because it's just, you never know. You never know what you're going to like, and I'm drooling right now just talking to you about it. But passion fruit was one of those things that I think I saw. I had no idea how to eat or what to do with it, but here they had it sliced, and I was so curious. I had no idea what it was. I just scooped it out. Unbelievable. It's so easy. So for the taste, I would say it's the combination of lemon and grapefruit just mixed together, and it's so easy. You don't have to peel it, you don't have to clean it, you don't have to separate seeds or any of that. You're actually eating the seeds. And so just scoop it out. It's very healthy and delicious. I did talk to you about the honey. That was just such a nice taste because it was different. It was different than the one that I eat, and was locally grown. So if you have the opportunity to try it in a different country, why not? More notes on the breakfast. I found it very interesting that this is where you would see tourists versus non-tourists, perhaps, or non-locals. I read this story a while ago, and it stayed with me. The women who, you know, take care of themselves and, you know, want to stay fit, they eat the same food when they travel. And it just stayed with me because that is not what I do, especially at a buffet, especially in a different country. I'm going to try everything. Now, I am mindful that I'm not going to like everything, right? So I take 1 scoop of everything, or the things I want to try. And then once I like it, then I can go back and get more of what I liked. So this way I tried to minimize waste. Now, what's interesting is that I saw only a handful of people do this. And then the majority ate fruit. I saw men eat apples and pears, several ones. And then women were eating bowls of, I want to say it was either a yogurt or oatmeal with some granola sprinkled on top. So this was very interesting for me because I was one of those Americans that just filled 2 plates and I tried everything and I was so embarrassed. I just couldn't help myself. It was just so delicious. The other things that I noticed, which are very interesting, of course, everything just tasted amazing. They had such a big variety of breads. The apple juice was actually green, and I found that so interesting. I've never had green apple juice, and makes me wonder what's the other juice that I drink here. But no, they had pomegranate and all kinds of berries, and it was just delicious. Now, continuing on the delicious items, Vin Chaud, which is a hot wine, is very, very popular. And my goodness, I missed it so much. I did grow up with this as well, and I definitely recommend it to you to try it out. Try to make it yourself at home. It's very simple. There's just sugar, red wine or white wine, some cinnamon and orange slices. There's one more spice. I don't know the name of it in English, but just boil it and just have it on a, cold winter night. It's delicious. They had it everywhere in the markets, in the restaurants. So yes, that was my go-to every day for lunch. And then, of course, you have the pretzels. They're so delicious. We have them here in the States as well, but sorry to say, not as good as those. I'm a really big pretzels fan, and they just had everything on the pretzels. They had olives, the salami. It was almost like they were replacing the pizza with a pretzel. So every variation of pizza was the same as every variation of pretzel. And one last note about the hot wine is that the restaurants offered the option without the sugar versus outdoor. When you drink it outside, it will be automatically with sugar. But you also have a big variety of white wine, red wine. You have apple, hot wine. Let's talk about a hotel for a minute. This was a 4-star, newer, renovated hotel, and I found some inconsistencies. I feel so spoiled right now because in the States, I've seen just a different level of niceness, I want to say, and you can clearly see the difference between 3 stars and 4 stars. And I definitely feel pampered because when I go to a hotel, it hasn't been really for business. Of course, when it's business, you don't have a choice. You get whatever you can get. But when I travel for leisure, it's such I really look at quality of service because most of the times it's with my children and I want to offer them a nice experience. I've also been at the lower end ones, and you don't want that. So that being said, I did pack my refillable water bottle because I drink a lot of water and I try to maintain that throughout the day. Now, especially when you travel and you're gone all day long from morning to night, you don't have your own source of water. So I, of course, brought my own. I also was aware that I don't want to pay 3, 4, 5 euros per bottle, one of those small 16-ounce bottles. Long story short, the hotel did not have any refillable area for water. They were only providing 1 small bottle a day, which I thought was, and we have to keep asking for more. And I thought that was a bit off-putting because I really wanted to feel that, I didn't want this small detail to be an issue. And these are the small annoyances that can, I don't want to say make or break your trip, but you should not have them, right? That's one of the downsides of traveling, is you have to deal with some of the smaller things that you have already solved at home, such as food, kitchen, filtered water, right? And you don't have that when you're in a hotel, and you're kind of left at the mercy of the staff, which is why I choose my hotels wisely. Also here in the States, I'm pretty sure someone told me, I haven't actually verified, but it's not legal to not be able to provide potable water in any building. And now that I thought of that, everywhere I go, there is a source of at least a water fountain. That's a library, that's mall, that's store, anywhere. And they actually have restrooms as well, public restrooms. So the fact that I didn't have that at a hotel or anywhere really. There were no public fountains, water fountains in any of the public spaces. You had to pretty much just shop. You either shop for water or you sit down at a restaurant and then you are served water. But to me, that was very limiting. And for a civilized modern country, I think this is a definite upgrade that they could be doing. More great news about the hotel. So, you know, when you travel to Europe from the US, you most likely will do an overnight flight. You'll get there very early on, and then you probably want to check in. Well, check-in is in the afternoon. And in our case, they wanted to charge 90 euros for early check-in. And I don't believe I've ever had to pay to check in early. And, you know, they kind of gave themselves away as well, because they even mentioned it when I got there that my room was available. They just didn't want to give it to me without me paying 90 euros. So again, this is just another example of how I felt like they were using the fact that I'm a tourist and I had no choice. So it was either pay 90 euros or sit on a couch in a lobby for 6-7 hours until check-in time, which after, you know, skipping out on the whole night, yes, I definitely wanted to see the bed and rest, which I think is very natural, right, to want. So I felt a little bit used on that one. Something different that I haven't seen before, and it just so happened to be in a restaurant while I saw them outside, were armed guards. And turns out it was next to Sacré-Cœur, which is, you know, religious building. And then I also saw them around the mall, and it was very different because, you know, in the US, of course, we have a lot more access to guns than in Europe. In fact, I've never seen any in Europe other than policemen. And to see rifles, men armed with rifles, was very different. But, you know, at least you get the sense of awareness that they have, and perhaps you know, the enhanced security is there for a reason, obviously. And yes, it's just something to, if you do see it, I guess just now you know to expect it. An interesting fact that there are double doors on the platform of the train. And what I'm talking about is, you know, when you have metro, you have the doors to the metro, the platform actually has doors as well, and they're synchronized. And then the platform doors open at the, you know, with where the train door opened. Not all stations, most of them had that. And I found that very interesting fact, because we do want to, you know, enhance the security, and we know all these accidents happen on a platform. So see, that is a really good addition, and something that I hope is going to come over here in the States as well, if it hasn't already done that. One less desirable, interesting fact that I've noticed is that there was no dog poop station. And what I mean is, you know, in nice public areas, there you have these islands right on the sidewalk, islands of soil with trees. And at every single island, you could see, you know, animal dog poop. And I haven't seen that in a very, very long time. And you know why? Because here in the States, I think they go above and beyond. You get fined if you don't pick up. You even have these stations with bags that are already provided to you, and you have the trash, and it's just part of being civilized, right? So the fact that they didn't have that, there were no signs also of fines or for, you know, the owners to pick up. Not that you need a sign, but you know what I mean? So I felt like that was outdated to me, because when you're looking at the city with the most visited city, one of them in the world, I found that really off-putting, that they didn't think about that, or that they haven't reached that level yet. Now let's talk about highlights and recommendations. The Candlelight Concert, oh my goodness, that was so beautiful, and I highly recommend it. There are churches, so many churches everywhere, and they hold concerts, very intimate concerts of candlelight. Just put a piano, and you have artists who travel around the country, and you know, know, they sell you tickets which are very affordable. I want to say between 20 and 30 euros per person, and you just sit and just enjoy music, hundreds of year-old music being played to you in a small, you know, relatively small room, church. And just the ambiance is very memorable, and the whole experience, I feel like that was one of the best things that I've done. And you know, of course, Murphy's Law, it's either free or very cheap, and I recommend it, and I felt like that was what Paris was about. That's what the French people are about. They love art and everything about art, and being able to do something genuine and something unique that also connects you with the location and just history. And it was a beautiful way to just end the entire the night, the whole experience. Let's talk about Moulin Rouge. There are a lot of good and bad happening, and I really don't want to spoil it for you. So I'm just going to give you the facts. They charge $2 per person to hang your coat. And this was strange because I don't remember seeing any sign for that. And, you know, advertising that you have to pay. And also, it was the only place in Paris that charged for a coat. And it's interesting because everywhere you have to bring your coat and you have to put down your coat. So they're very much well aware of what they're doing. And I just felt again that they are using the, you know, trying to squeeze out everything out of you. All right. Fact number two, of course, tickets were purchased in advance, and there are 3 tiers you can buy. The first tier was the 130 euros per person, and that's the one I bought, which was the cheapest one. You just sit down at a table. Tier 2 would have been with a glass of champagne included, another 12.5 euros, which we opted out of because we said we're just going to purchase on the spot whatever it is we want. Turns out the cheapest champagne on the spot was 15 euros. And option number 3 was a whole dinner experience ahead of the show. And so these are the 3 tiers. We sat down and we were seated. Of course, everything is smaller there, right? In France, the tables were small. I want to say like this wide. So 2 of these attached would sit 4 people, right, on both sides. Well, they sat 6 people. And I want to say one of the rows was with the back towards the stage, which was very, very strange. In addition to that, there was this much space between our table and a wall. And that little space was constantly being circulated by the waiter, trying to get to other tables and back. So it was just like unimaginable how squeezed the whole situation was. And you just felt like they overpacked the room. I'm pretty sure in the US that would be a fire hazard and that would not be allowed. And just it was fully booked. Now, again, for the price that you pay, you're just expecting a much better experience. That being said, the show was spectacular. The ladies were gorgeous. The outfits were just wow. And the whole performance, in addition, between the dances, they had real acrobats and real high quality type of, you know, just, I don't want to ruin it for you, but it was Cirque du Soleil level, and I've seen a couple of shows and I was impressed. And it was just, highly recommend this experience. Just forget about the tables, forget about the cost, just you have to try one time and then just take it as is, you know, something new and something different. Let me know what has been your experience if you visited France. I'm open to all the feedback. Share any tips you might have for us, and I will see you soon in my next video. Take care.